Hey students, this is a personal finance class for math credit, so we'll be learning some things about functions and how they relate to taxes. We're going to start off by looking at 4 ways to write a function. We can either do it by writing an equation, we can list it in its ordered pairs as an ordered pair with parentheses x comma y, or on a table with ordered pairs. Then we can also graph it on the coordinate plane and draw a graph of the function. In addition, we can just use words to describe the situation. So let's take a look at these 4 representations in an example. Words can describe a situation such that for every hour that Penelope works, she gets paid $11. As an equation, we could write that as f of h equals 11h. H is the input, the number of hours worked. F of h is the output, or Penelope's total pay. The way a function works is you can input any value for h and calculate an output for f of h. So using that, you can then create a table of ordered pairs with these inputs and calculate these outputs. After you have these ordered pairs, you can also express this function as a graph. And you can see these ordered pairs are graphed over here. And this linear function describes Penelope's total pay as a function of how many hours she has worked. Another topic we will be learning is domain and range. Domain are all the possible inputs for a function. The range are all the possible outputs of a function. Now, because the 4 views are all different ways of representing the same situation, then we can find the domain and range from any of those 4 views of a function. Let's take a look at an example, and we'll also take a look at determining what makes sense to be part of the domain and what makes sense to be part of the range. Mary Ellen pays $50 per month, and she gets to use up to 5 gigabytes of data on her cell phone. After 5 gigabytes, she's charged $10 per gigabyte for any additional data that she uses. What is the domain and range of this function? The first thing we need to do is define the variables. There are 2 variables in this situation. We have how much data she is using, the number of gigabytes used, and how much money she has to pay, the total dollars spent. The independent variable, the variable that Mary Ellen can choose, is how many gigabytes of data she uses. And the total dollars spent is dependent upon the number of gigabytes. The domain will be the number of gigabytes of data. The range will be the number of dollars spent. Now let's think about what actually makes sense. So Mary Ellen can use as much data as she wants, but she can't use a negative amount of data. A negative number would not be part of the domain. It does not make sense in this situation. So we can say 0 and anything positive. And what about the range? Then you can write the domain using inequality notations, and we use x to denote the input or the domain. X has to be greater than or equal to 0. I would write it with this equal sign underneath it. Finally, you can do the same thing for the output. If she's going to pay at least $50, no matter how much she pays, y is going to be greater than or equal to 50. We can see this same information on the graph. The input or domain starts at 0, includes 0, and continues on towards infinity. The range starts at 50 and also continues upwards towards infinity. We're now going to take a look at something called a piecewise function. A piecewise function is when there are different rules for the output depending on what the input is. And the way we write piecewise functions is using case notation. It looks like this, where f of x equals this big curlicue, and you give the different rules and what the input has to be with the given output. So here's the situation going on here. Therese creates projects for people. If it takes him less than 4 hours, he will charge $60. So if x is greater than or equal to 0, less than or equal to 4, basically up to 4 hours, then the output is 60, regardless of whether it took him 2 hours or 3 hours. If, however, that project takes him more than 4 hours, the rule he uses is 15 times x. He charges $15 per hour it takes him to create that project. So this is a piecewise function that represents Teresa's project fees. The fee he charges depends on how many hours it takes him. This is pretty similar to what we say about tax brackets, where the rule of what percentage you take out of your taxes depends on what your income is. Now let's take a look at another topic you're going to be practicing. Graphs of functions can be continuous or discontinuous. Continuous means that you could pretty much draw the graph without lifting up your pencils. There's no holes or jumps. So for all these functions, they continue. There are no spaces between the graph. And these are discontinuous. This first one is discontinuous because there is a jump in the graph. So at the point x equals 1, the output is 5, where if x equals 0.999, the output looks like it's a little less than 3. So this jump in the graph makes it discontinuous. The second one is discontinuous simply because of this little space here. There are outputs for every input except for -3. And since -3 is not in the domain, there's that little space in the graph. It is not continuous. And this last graph is not continuous because there's an asymptote in the middle, and as you can see, there are two separate pieces of that graph. Okay, we have finished going through the Learn It tab. The purpose of this video was to teach a quick review of this information. In class, the work that you're going to do is in the Practice It tab. First thing I'd like you to note is that you should please highlight all of your work or answers in the color of your choice so that I can easily see your work. And then I want to just scroll through and show you how you're going to fill it in. Over here, you have a situation with voluntary deductions for retirement and health insurance. This is the function given as an equation. You need to input these x values to calculate the output values. Put those in the table, make sure you highlight your answer. Then I'd like you to graph the ordered pairs you've created in this table on the coordinate plane. This is a Google drawing, so the way you're going to edit this is double-click it. This will open up. You're going to be able to insert lines, insert little circles as points, and when you're done editing this, you can press Save and Close, and your edits should be here. You'll answer these two questions, highlight your answers, and over here, you're going to continue discussing Teresa's art fees. Look at the graphs, which one makes sense, and this is a continuation with that and piecewise functions. Here we have another situation with a piecewise function. This time there are 3 different rules. And then what is f of 4? When you input 4, what is the output? Over here, you get to draw any continuous or discontinuous function. And again, you'll double click on it. It is a Google drawing. Here's a little bit more of a discussion about the bike fee situation. And then last but not least, you have a card sort. You will need to click on this link. It will open up a new tab. You cannot see it because I am only recording this tab. However, you will have 3 choices you'll have graphs, you'll have case notation, you'll have an input and output value, and you'll have a word situation. I'd like you to copy and paste from this link over here. You'll copy and paste them into each row here. And that will be your work. If you have any questions, please email me for clarification. Or come to a WinTime session. I am happy to help.